What happens when family greed goes too far? My cousin Andrew didn't just take the biggest piece of Grandpa's inheritance, he tried to manipulate my relationship with my girlfriend in the courthouse itself. Lies, whispers, and shocking confrontations tore our family apart. Who really controls the legacy? And can trust ever be restored after such betrayal? Watch as secrets are exposed, alliances form, and the fallout will leave you speechless. I honestly don't even know where to start, because my family has always been messy, but what went down at the courthouse a few weeks ago completely changed how I see my cousin Andrew. So here's the setup. My grandfather passed away last year. He owned a small chain of auto shops in our town plus some property. The will had been locked up in probate for months, and finally, the family had to gather at the courthouse for the official reading. Everyone was already tense. Money brings out the worst in people, and our family is no exception. My mom was pacing in the hallway outside the courtroom, muttering, "If your uncle tries anything shady, I swear," while my Aunt Linda was on the phone, loudly pretending she didn't care about the inheritance even though everyone knew she was desperate for cash. And then there was Andrew. He's my cousin, but we grew up more like brothers. We used to play video games together, hang out after school, share secrets. I trusted him more than anyone, which is why what he did hit so hard. I brought my girlfriend, Sarah, with me that day. She wanted to be supportive, and honestly, I needed her there because my anxiety was through the roof. The second we walked in, I noticed Andrew staring at her. Not just a casual glance, but lingering. Like he was sizing her up. At first, I brushed it off, thinking I was paranoid. But then during a break, while everyone was waiting for the clerk to come back with more documents, Andrew slid right up next to Sarah and said loud enough for me to hear, "Crazy day, huh? You know, you don't have to stick around all this boring family drama. I could take you out sometime, show you a better side of this town." Sarah immediately looked uncomfortable and stepped closer to me, but I swear my ears started ringing. I was so stunned I just froze. Did my own cousin just try to hit on my girlfriend at my grandfather's while reading? I pulled him aside, trying to keep my voice down. "Andrew, what the hell are you doing?" He smirked. "Relax, man, I was just joking, don't be so uptight." But his tone wasn't joking, it was smug, almost like he wanted me to get mad. Meanwhile, the rest of the family was bickering about property shares. My uncle Frank was yelling that the business should go to him because he kept it running when Grandpa got sick. My mom was snapping back that Grandpa explicitly wanted everything divided equally. It was chaos. And through all that noise, I realized Andrew was inserting himself into the middle of it, not about the will, but between me and Sarah. Every time I tried to focus on the inheritance discussions, I'd catch him whispering to her, asking questions about her job, her hobbies, even making little digs at me like, "Does he ever tell you how lucky he is?" By the time we got called back into the courtroom, my blood was boiling. The inheritance fight was one thing, but Andrew crossing into my relationship right there, in the courthouse, felt like a betrayal I couldn't ignore. When we went back into the courtroom, I tried to shove my anger down and focus on what mattered of the inheritance. The clerk read through the documents, and sure enough, Grandpa's was said everything should be split evenly between his children, which meant my mom, my uncle Frank, and Aunt Linda. But then the lawyer dropped the bomb. Grandpa had left a special provision for Andrew. Apparently, Grandpa had set aside a property deed in Andrew's name. It was one of the auto shop locations, the biggest one, the one that made the most profit. My mom immediately slammed her hand on the table. "That's not fair. Dad said everything would be split equally. Why does Andrew get extra?" Uncle Frank started shouting too, saying Grandpa had been manipulated in his old age. Linda jumped in, of course, playing the victim. "If Andrew gets that shop, what am I supposed to do? I've got bills." The room turned into a circus. But Andrew? He sat there calm as hell, leaning back in his chair with that smug grin. He wasn't even defending himself, just soaking up the chaos like he was enjoying it. And then I noticed Sarah, sitting stiff next to me, avoiding eye contact with him. That's when it clicked. Andrew wasn't just gunning for the shop. He wanted to shake me to my core, and Sarah was his leverage. At one point, the judge actually had to bang the gavel to get everyone to shut up. The official ruling was that the will stood as written, so Andrew was legally entitled to that property. My mom was furious, muttering under her breath, and Frank stormed out before the session even ended. When we all stepped out into the hallway, I thought things might calm down. Nope. Andrew came over to me and Sarah with the fakest nice guy smile I've ever seen. "Hey, men," he said, clapping me on the back like we were still close. "No hard feelings, right? Business is business, and, Sarah, if you ever want to see the shop sometime, I'd be happy to give you a private tour." I lost it. "Are you serious right now? You just walked out of court with Grandpa's biggest asset and you're still trying to hit on my girlfriend. What the hell is wrong with you?" People stopped to stare. My mum hissed, "Keep your voice down," but I didn't care. Sarah looked mortified, mumbling, "I think we should just go." Andrew leaned in closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "Face it, man, you never really mattered to Grandpa, and Sarah, she deserves better than someone who's always playing second fiddle." That line cut like a knife. It wasn't just about Sarah anymore, it was about my place in the family, about everything I thought I knew. I realized in that moment Andrew wasn't just interfering in my relationship, he was trying to rewrite the entire family dynamic to make himself the golden one. And I wasn't about to let him win. By the time we stepped out of the courthouse doors, the air felt like it was thick with tension. People were muttering, shifting uncomfortably, and my mum had her arms crossed so tight I thought she might snap. I could barely focus on her because Andrew was still standing there, casually leaning against the wall, smirking like he owned the place. I grabbed Sarah's hand and whispered, "Let's just get out of here before I do something stupid." She nodded, but I could feel her shaking. We started walking toward the parking lot, trying to keep some distance from Andrew, but as fate would have it, he decided to follow. "Come on, don't be like that," he called out. "I'm family, you're overreacting, you should calm down." I turned on him, fury rising. Overreacting, you just tried to hit on my girlfriend in front of our family at the courthouse, while getting your hands on the biggest piece of Grandpa's inheritance. What exactly do you call that? He shrugged, that infuriating smirk still plastered on his face. Business is business, and Sarah as well. She's just Sarah. Don't be so uptight. That's when my Uncle Frank, who apparently stormed out earlier, reappeared. He wasn't looking at Andrew, he was glaring at me. What's going on here? Are you yelling at Andrew now? I felt my face flush. Frank, this isn't about me yelling. This is about Andrew stepping over every line. He's not just taking Grandpa's shop. He's trying to sabotage my relationship. Frank scoffed. Sabotage? He's your cousin. He's entitled to what Grandpa left him. I could feel my mom stepping in behind me, her voice icy. Frank, don't twist this. Andrew crossed the line. You don't flirt with your cousin's girlfriend at a courthouse reading. Andrew laughed then, a low, chilling laugh. See, this is why you're all sympathetic. You fight over scraps while I get what I want without even trying. And honestly, if you just relax, we could all get along. My hands were shaking. Sarah was gripping my arm, clearly terrified of how this was escalating. We should leave, she whispered again. But I couldn't. Not yet. I leaned in toward Andrew, trying to keep my voice steady. You think this is some game? You think taking Grandpa's property makes you king of the family? You've crossed every line, and I'm done letting you manipulate everyone. Andrew's eyes narrowed, and for a second, I thought he might strike me. But instead, he smiled coldly and said, Fine, you can be mad, but don't forget, I'm still getting the shop, and I know plenty of people who will side with me. You're already on the losing team. At that moment, I realized something worse than anger. I realized fear. Fear that Andrew wasn't just going to interfere with me and Sarah. He was going to try to take control of the family entirely, rewriting the legacy Grandpa left behind. And worse, he had momentum. Everyone around him was either intimidated or tempted by the idea of siding with him. Sarah squeezed my hand. We need a plan, before this gets out of control. I nodded. The courthouse confrontation had ended, but the real war with Andrew, that was just beginning. The next day, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept replaying Andrew's smirk, his words, and the way he'd managed to shake not just me, but the entire family. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. Going back to the courthouse was out of the question. The will had already been read, and legally, Andrew was in the clear. But morally, he had crossed every line imaginable. I decided to start by talking to Sarah. We met at a quiet cafe away from the chaos of my family. Her hands were still trembling as she stirred her coffee. I don't know how to deal with him, she admitted. I feel like every time I try to ignore him, he finds a way to get under our skin. I know, I said, gripping her hand. I'm not going to let him ruin us. He might have the shop, but he doesn't get to mess with our relationship, not on my watch. After that, I decided to confront Andrew head on. I called him and asked him to meet me at the old park near my childhood home, the one place where we used to hang out without anyone else around. He showed up with that same cocky grin. Glad you could make it, he said. I was starting to think you'd chicken out. I ignored the jab and got straight to the point. Andrew, what you did at the courthouse, it wasn't just wrong, it was manipulative. You were trying to interfere with me and Sarah. Why? He leaned back against the railing, folding his arms. Look, I'm honest with you. I like being the center of attention, and honestly, you and your girlfriend were easy targets. I didn't plan for Grandpa to leave me the shop, but I took advantage. Can you blame me? Yes, I can blame you. You betrayed everyone and me, Sarah, even Grandpa in a way. You're trying to turn this family against itself, and I won't let you. My voice rose, and I could feel my heart hammering at my chest. Andrew chuckled. You still don't get it, do you? The family wants me to succeed. Everyone is on my side, whether you like it or not. You're clinging to your little sense of justice while I'm moving forward. I realized then that this wasn't just about Sarah or me, it was about protecting what was left of Grandpa's legacy and making sure Andrew didn't manipulate every single person into letting him control everything. So this is war? I asked quietly. Andrew smirked, his eyes glinting. If you want to call it that, sure, but don't think you can stop me. You're outnumbered already. I left the park that day feeling more determined than ever. I needed to get my family on my side, to expose Andrew's interference before it got worse. The pieces were moving, and I had to play smart. That night, I started making calls. I talked to Aunt Linda first. She was furious with Andrew for taking the shop, and once I reminded her how he had tried to manipulate Sarah and me, she was ready to help. Then Mom, who was already seething, promised she wouldn't let Andrew bulldoze over us. Even Uncle Frank, though stubborn, started to listen when I laid out how Andrew had turned personal relationships into leverage. By the end of the day, I had a small alliance forming. But Andrew wasn't going to back down quietly, and I knew the next confrontation would be even more intense. A week later, my family organised a dinner at Aunt Linda's house under the guise of celebrating the inheritance being settled, but really, it was my chance to confront Andrew in front of everyone. I spent the whole afternoon pacing, rehearsing what I was going to say. Sarah kept telling me to calm down, but I couldn't. I knew Andrew would try something, and I had to be ready. When we arrived, the tension was immediate. Andrew was already there, leaning casually against the counter, sipping wine and greeting everyone with that infuriating grin. Mom was in the living room, arms crossed. Uncle Frank was muttering to himself, clearly still bitter about the shop. Aunt Linda was fussing over the table, trying to act cheerful. Andrew spotted me and Sarah and sauntered over. Oh, the lovebirds, he said, voice dripping with mock sweetness. Enjoying family time? I ignored him and went straight to the point. Andrew, we need to talk, now, in front of everyone. He raised an eyebrow. In front of everyone? You were going to make a scene? Yes, I said firmly. Because you've been crossing lines, manipulating my relationship with Sarah, acting like you owned the family and trying to control everyone for your gain. Sarah stepped closer, holding my arm. He's not exaggerating, Andrew, this has gone too far. Andrew laughed, a low, arrogant chuckle. Oh, so now she's against me too? I'm flattered, really. But if you think you can turn the family against me, you're dreaming. That's when things started to unravel. I had secretly talked to Aunt Linda and Mom beforehand. They started chiming in. Linda sighed. He's lying. He's been trying to manipulate every one of us since Grandpa passed. Mom added, and he tried to flirt with Sarah at the courthouse right in front of everyone. Andrew's smirk faltered slightly, and he glanced around. I could see Uncle Frank's eyes narrowing, his frustration finally boiling over. You've got some nerve, Andrew, Frank growled. Trying to play everyone while getting your hands on the shop. We all know what you're doing. Andrew tried to regain control, stepping closer to me, lowering his voice. You all are being ridiculous. I'm family too. Don't you get that? No, I snapped. Being family doesn't give you the right to interfere, manipulate, or steal what doesn't belong to you. You think Grandpa left you the shop because he wanted you to hurt people. For the first time, Andrew didn't have a clever comeback. The room fell silent. Even he knew he had crossed a line everyone could see. Sarah, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Andrew, you may have the shop, but that doesn't make you untouchable. What you did to me, to us, it's not okay. He finally looked at her, and I saw a flicker of realization, maybe even regret, but his pride kept him from apologizing. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. By the end of the night, Andrew was isolated. He stayed quiet, nursing his wine, while the rest of us talked strategy, making sure the family knew he had overstepped. The first real cracks in his manipulative armor were showing. I felt exhausted but relieved. This wasn't over, but for the first time, I realized that exposing him in front of everyone gave me the upper hand. Andrew had underestimated us, and now, he was on the defensive. The next few days were a strange mix of relief and tension. Andrew didn't reach out to anyone except to insist he was fine and that we were all overreacting. But his usual smug confidence was gone. He wasn't controlling conversations or dropping subtle comments to shake people up. It was quiet, almost austere. I spent most of the time with Sarah, trying to decompress and remind her that the worst was over. She still looked uneasy, though. I can't believe he actually did that in front of everyone, she said, shaking her head. It's one thing to be annoying, but that was malicious. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of anger and vindication. Yeah, but now people see him for what he really is. No one's going to let him get away with manipulating us anymore. Mom and Aunt Linda were especially supportive. Mom had called a family meeting to lay down some ground rules. No more scheming behind each other's backs, no more trying to control relationships, and no interference with anyone's inheritance. It wasn't perfect, but it gave me hope that Andrew's reign of quiet terror was over, at least for now. Andrew didn't attend the meeting. He claimed he was busy with shop matters, but we all knew better. He was sulking, and it was obvious. Uncle Frank even commented, half laughing, never thought I'd see Andrew like this quiet and powerless. Then came the turning point. A few days later, Sarah and I were invited to the auto shop by Andrew. Oddly enough, he wanted to show her some renovations he'd made. I didn't want to go, but curiosity and a sense of closure pushed me forward. When we arrived, Andrew was there, but instead of the smug grin, he looked different. Look, I know I messed up, he said, avoiding eye contact. I shouldn't have interfered. I see that now. I felt my jaw tighten. Was he really apologizing? Or was this another manipulation? Sarah spoke first. Actions matter more than words, Andrew. You can't just walk in here and expect everything to be okay. He nodded, visibly uncomfortable. I get that. I just wanted to try and make things right. I can't undo what I did, but I don't want to be the villain in the family anymore. For the first time, I believed him. It wasn't a perfect fix, and I knew some wounds might take months to heal, but it was a start. Slowly, he began to show that he could interact without scheming or stepping over boundaries. He even helped Sarah with some ideas for a charity event in town, a small gesture, but significant. By the end of the week, the tension had eased considerably. The inheritance issue was officially settled, everyone knew where they stood, and Andrew was at least trying to find his place without causing chaos. Walking home with Sarah, I realised that the courthouse confrontation, Andrew's interference, and the chaos that followed had changed all of us. It had exposed hidden tensions, forced us to take sides, and ultimately made us stronger as a family. I didn't love that Andrew had caused all this turmoil, but maybe, just maybe, it had been the wake-up call he needed. And for me, it reinforced a lesson I'll never forget. Family isn't just about blood, it's about trust, respect, and knowing when to stand your ground. A month later, things had finally settled into a kind of uneasy peace. Family was still a little bruised from all the chaos, but there was laughter again, small gatherings that didn't end in shouting matches, and a general sense that boundaries were finally being respected. Andrew had retreated into his new shop, focused on running it properly, and, surprisingly, he seemed content with leaving the personal drawer behind. Sarah and I had settled into quite a routine too. No more whispers in hallways or awkward courthouse stairs. It felt almost normal, and I couldn't tell if I was relieved or just exhausted from the intensity of the last few weeks. One evening, my mom pulled me aside. I know you've had it rough with Andrew, she said, voice soft. But you handled yourself well. You protected Sarah, and you protected what's left of the family. I'm proud of you. It hit me harder than I expected. After all the stress, all the manipulation, the tension, I had actually stood my ground. Not just for myself, but for the people I cared about. Even Uncle Frank, surprisingly, gave a small nod of approval when I ran into him at the grocery store. You did good, he muttered gruffly. Kid's got backbone. It was rare praise coming from him, and I let myself savour it. Andrew never apologised formally to everyone, but his actions spoke louder than words. At the next family dinner, he stayed at a respectful distance, helped clear dishes, and even complimented Sarah on her charity project. It was awkward at first, but I noticed he was making a genuine effort to repair some of the damage he'd done. There were still reminders of the tension in the empty spot where Uncle Frank had refused to sit next to Andrew at one gathering, The quiet moments when Mom would sigh about how fragile the peace still was, but overall, things were better. We'd survived the chaos, and the family had grown stronger for it, even if Andrew had been the catalyst. One evening, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. The courthouse confrontation, Andrew's interference, the fights, the alliances, and finally, the slow rebuilding of trust. It had all been exhausting, but it had taught me something important. Family can be messy, even toxic at times, but loyalty, honesty, and standing up for what's right can turn the tide. Sarah leaned against me, smiling. "We made it through," she said quietly. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my chest. Andrew's manipulations had threatened to tear the family apart, and for a moment, I wasn't sure we'd survive it. But in the end, boundaries were set, truths were exposed, and even Andrew had to adjust. I realized that the inheritance wasn't just about money or property, it was about who we were as a family, and how far we'd go to protect the people and relationships that mattered most. And for the first time in weeks, I could finally breathe, knowing that, while the scars would remain, we had survived and maybe even grown stronger because